Call the meeting to order. I'm sorry we were a few minutes late. I needed to go to another committee for just a second. So thank you. Okay, calling the Higher Ed Budget Committee to order. First, do we have any bill introductions? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am introducing our 22 RS 2921, an act concerning the disposition of state real property on behalf of Pittsburgh State University to sell certain property to the city of Pittsburgh, Crawford County, Kansas.
Do we have any discussion? Okay, without objection, we will consider that request for bill introduction affirmed. Okay, committee, we are now going to go to our recommendations from the State Library and the State Historical Society that we had last week. And then, as you know, the main bulk of our time today will be with Pittsburgh State. And so I want to take all the time we need for the budget recommendations, but I also don't want to cut Pittsburgh State short. So, I mean, if we had to, we could come back to the recommendations at the end, but we'll just see how it goes. We're going to go ahead and start with the State Library. We're going to do the State Library first. I hope you all have had a chance to look over these over the weekend. And, okay, do I have a motion or any discussion? Representative Riley.
Madam Chair, last Tuesday I was in appropriations and was listening in to one of the agencies discussing the...
Is your microphone on? Okay, sorry. Okay.
So last week, can you hear right now? Last week I was listening to agency and appropriations, and they were discussing one of their programs, which was the Dolly Parton. It wasn't their program, but a program that they're supporting, which is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, where basically that organization sends out from birth to, I think, 4 or 5 a book a month to parents so that they can read to their kids, and then eventually kids could read to themselves. I did make a email to the director of State Library and had a short conversation before about that program, and I think she's supportive of that program. I would just like to make a second ago, Shirley, possibly make a addition to their request. Starts with a P. Proviso, thank you, of adding another $250,000 to their budget to include supporting this Dolly Parton Imagination Library. I think since they have the association with those libraries, and currently it's being supported in 26 different counties. By adding a matching amount to that of another $250,000, we could get it out to another 26 or more libraries around Kansas of this program. And so that would be my motion to add that to this budget.
Do we have a second? Representative Burris, second. Okay, let's have some discussion. Committee, if you would like to. Anyone like to talk about this? Representative Wassinger.
The other places in the state that are doing this, how are they being funded at this time?
They're being funded through grants, I think, through their own program. Currently, this program at the local level, and I'm just going to read here real quick, is being supported by Kiwanis clubs, Rotaries clubs, United Way, or other community foundations are also supporting this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate to take over the funding for something when we have private entities that are willing to do this. Yes.
Did just want to mention, this is Gabrielle from Legislative Research. I did want to mention that there's currently a governor's recommendation in the Kansas Department of Education budget for $500,000 for the Imagination Library.
Gabrielle, was it 300 that we funded the Dolly Parton Library last year?
I have to double check the amount from last year, but it is.
I think it was 300, but okay. Okay, so just so you all know, and Representative Rajas is also on appropriations, and so is Representative Woodard, but this was mostly from last year. We did put, I think it was 300 in for the Dolly Parton Library, and it's a Dolly Parton provides the books, and then how they get out to each family is what is funded through. It has been through counties and different things, but we did put some money in SGF for that. Is that accurate, you would say?
Yes, Madam Chair. Northwest Kansas, and in my district, is the home of the Dane Hansen Foundation. They serve 37 counties in Northwest Kansas, and they do that. I think that's kind of where the impetus of this started with the House of Appropriations Chairman. And so to give the opportunity to expand it, I think is why it's in the governor's budget. I mean, I appreciate what you want to do, and it may make some sense to maybe tie it into the library, the state library, but I guess I would stick with it where it is, and then maybe once it's in every county, we can look at shifting that, because what's happening is basically the cost is the postage, and so is that, and again, is it enough to cover every child? The state should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. I mean, if a private company wants to do it, or a private service club wants to do it, that's one thing. But for the state of Kansas, we always have that conversation, we should not be in the business. But sometimes that happens, I understand. But anyway, that's probably a long-winded explanation.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes, Representative Riley.
Again, my purpose wasn't for the state library to take that program over. It was simply to add to those funds so that we could get to the point that we had every county that was, or as many counties as possible. So I'm not doing a takeaway. I'm doing a proviso to add to those funds. So instead of there being 26 counties, we could expand that with that money going out there. And there is a connection there between the state libraries doing this kind of thing and their connection, because the parents do enroll with the libraries, the county libraries, and make that connection. So I could just see, instead of us having 200 or 300,000, have 500,000 kind of thing. So that was my point. I want to increase this good program.
And Representative Riley, if I may ask, are you okay with? So in the governor's budget, it did increase at 500,000 and it was in education. Or are you still wanting it specifically to the state library?
So what you're saying is, I think, was hers in just education, or that 500,000, or was it also part of DCF, the children's
Should.
initiative?
Gabrielle, do you know?
The 500,000 is all from special revenue funds in the Kansas Department of Education's budget.
Okay.
So is there additional 250,000 in the children's fund coming there, or was that included in that 500? Because I heard 250,000 the other day in appropriations.
Let me double check on the amount total. That's just the amount for fiscal year 23 in the Kansas Department of Education.
Okay, and I think it was when Melissa Rooker presented to the Appropriations Committee.
So, Madam Chair, I think I was confused, because my understanding was that's the only place it was coming from.
Mm.
And so if there is more money coming from someplace else, then I would take off, remove my motion, but I'll allow the discussion into this.
Okay. Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say that after learning that that is included in the different budget, I'll probably, if the motion does go forward, I'd probably oppose it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Riley.
So, again, we'll have to check with the second on this, but I think I would, knowing that there's that going through education, then I would withdraw my motion.
Is that okay with the second? Okay, thank you. Then thank you for bringing that issue to light. Okay, committee, do we have any other motions? Yeah, Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move the governor's recommendation for the state library for fiscal years 22 and 23.
Just a second. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Representative Nguyen. Any discussion on that budget recommendation? Okay, committee, all those in favor, or would you like to close on your?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I close.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no? Okay, the ayes have it. So that will be the state library. We will accept the governor's recommendation for FY22 and FY23. Thank you, committee. Okay, now we will go on to the Kansas Historical Society. You will get out your budgets from last time and we can talk about that. So do we have any discussion on the State Historical Society? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we accept the governor's recommendation for 2022. For 2023, I move that we reduce the number of FTEs by 6 to 79.5, and with that, the total general fund spending I recommend would be $4,371,761, and that's compared to the total general fund spending in 2022 of $4,282,448. That would be a total increase in state general fund spending of 2.08%, and a total spending for 2023 would be $7,173,895, and all that information is in a sheet of paper that everyone has.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Representative Riley seconds. Committee, do we have discussion? Oh, sorry. Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, my concern is how did we come up with the number 6 when if you look at the number of FTEs, it's been consistent. So the question is, why 6? Why not 2? Why not 4?
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It increased from 58 to 85.5, and I was just discussing this with another member, and we just thought that was too big of an increase, and just decided we'd propose to decrease it by a certain amount. And well, it was Representative Riley, and I think the number he came up with was 8. I reduced that down to 6 because we just thought if it was 8, the calculations I did would actually probably result in a spending cut. And my proposal is not a spending cut. It's still a SGF spending increase of 2%, so that we're not cutting any spending, but it just results in a smaller spending increase, and which was sort of my goal, because I felt that the total 9.1% spending increase from my perspective was too large. Even though we have a large budget surplus, we're looking to transfer $1 billion from the state general fund over to CAPERS. We're looking to pay off a lot of debt, and so for a lot of these agencies, I don't particularly want to increase SGF spending by that much in a year. So my goal was just to to not cut spending, but just to have a smaller increase in spending. And so I came up with the 6 number so that it would result in a overall smaller spending increase, but not an actual cut in spending.
Okay, Representative Wassinger, thank you.
Could you answer a quick question? How many actually, Jenny, FTEs are currently funded within your?
Introduce yourself, please.
This is Jenny Chin. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Historical Society. We currently have 63 funded and 14.5 not funded. But if the governor's budget is approved, which is what the agency is asking for, then we would use 8 of those not filled.
Have you had any trouble filling positions? Because I think everyone in the state's having a problem with workforce. So that's
some, but we're still getting applications. I mean, when we put something out there, we still get them. It's a specialized field, so there's only so many places to work with these kind of degrees. So it's I'll say it yes and no. It depends on the position.
it just seems like a large leap to go back up to 85 when we still are having issues.
I understand that.
Thank you for your question.
Could I clarify one thing? Right now, you have 56 FTEs that, no, 63 are funded right now, but you have 56 equivalent employees. I thought I heard you say that the other day, that you have 56.
We do, but we're in the process of hiring several others. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're funded for at the amount of 63, and you would like, or just if you could clarify this, the governor's budget would give you funding for plus 14?
No, 8.
The governor's budget is plus 8. Okay, so 71.
Yes, that's the correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Representative Riley, then Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So quick question. I didn't mean for you to come away from the mic, but my question would be, during the period of time that the State Museum is closing down, I think that there's probably 5 or 6 people that are working for you right now for that. So will you move them back into another department, maybe retrain them during that 1.5 year closed, or will they be laid off completely?
No, they will actually be working because while an outside firm will be developing new exhibits, they will be taking down the old one, and we've estimated it's about the same amount of time. So they will have a job, particularly to take care of the artifacts that are on display now. It's our responsibility to know where they are and where they're stored at any given time. So no, the current staff would keep their jobs during that because we have work for them.
Representative Amix.
Madam Chair, and Jenny, the question that I had is the reinstatement of the COVID-19 decrease funds, the $453,000 there. Those 8 positions that are laid out in that request, are those 8?
Yes, yes, those are the 8 positions that the governor, that was the money that she took out when it looked like we weren't going to have as many revenues as we did. And so she put it back in this year. So it is for those 8 positions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Jenny, these funds are going to be used, and these people are going to be used for the new exhibits that are going to come on board, correct?
Yes.
And as I see this in that 453,000, there's no talk about additional FTEs. We're adding all this work, and a lot of things aren't getting done now, right?
Right. But we will have some flexibility to reassign temporarily those employees to other places when we need them. So as I mentioned the other day, if you could see, we could deal with less if that's the issue of FTE. there's room there that you could take some if that would help you. But that keeps us being able to keep moving forward. What we're asking for.
Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the person bringing the motion. I do think I'm going to oppose it, though. The State Historical Society is one of the agencies that took a full 10% cut, I believe. And so this would allow them to get back. I do think that in the spirit of your amendment, we do get to review the budgets every year. So this might be something that we could look at in fiscal year 23 as we're looking back and to see if this is something ongoing. But I would hate to take these away from them right now as they're trying to reopen as we emerge from the pandemic and get people back to normal. So I'll be opposing the amendment.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just note that this isn't actually an amendment. I mean, we're not required to accept the governor's recommendation. It's simply a recommendation that's different from the governor's recommendation, so it's really not an amendment.
Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because I do think it's important that we move forward. I do think that we should include these positions to help the State Historical Society help get back to normal and get these new exhibits opened and the public back in as much as possible. I'm going to make a substitute motion to adopt the governor's budget recommendation for fiscal years 22 and 23 for the State Historical Society.
Do we have a second? Representative Nguyen, second. Discussion on the substitute motion. Representative Wassinger.
Are we talking about the 71 number? Back up to 85.
It's what the governor approved with the reinstatement from page 9 on the budget summary.
I would
8 positions, sorry.
I would like to use some restraint in this next year and see how things move up. When
Representative Riley.
Madam Chair, I agree with the previous. It's going to be a year and a half, 2 years before the Kansas Museum is back after all of its remodeling and everything. So that's going to put us into 24 or something. I also still hold with restraints and vote no on the substitute. Thanks.
Is there any other discussion on the substitute motion? Would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Chair, I close.
Okay, all those in favor of the substitute motion, which is accepting the governor's recommendation for 22 and 23, say aye, please. All those opposed? I think the ayes have it. Okay, thank you. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to request a roll call vote.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. All those opposed? So I'm gonna oppose the substitute motion, and I'm gonna make another motion. And my motion will be we accept the governor's budget as recommended, but we reduce the FTEs for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 to 71. It doesn't change the funding from what I understand. Seconded by Representative Wassinger. Is there any discussion? Representative Riley.
Madam Chair, I like your substitute motion, so therefore I'll be voting for it. It exceeds my expectations, so I'll be voting for it.
Any other discussion? Representative Woodard.
Madam Chair, just to confirm, that with your motion, it doesn't change funding, it just changes the approved FTEs for the next fiscal year.
Would you like to ask someone?
Phone a friend.
You can phone a friend, either
Either
director or revisor, researcher.
is willing to, or the executive director.
Yep.
Just a quick question. Were you reducing the FTE?
Yes. Mhm. Would you like to come up? Yep. So would you agree that that right now the governor's budget funds 71 FTEs?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Or please ask a question, Representative Woodard.
Sure. I believe that was what my last motion was, but could have been wrong.
Thank you, committee, for being patient. I think your last motion included 85.5 FTEs. That was my understanding. Okay, Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jenny, just one question. The adoption of the budget was 71 FTEs. What do you do without, or what does the State Historical Society do without?
Well, I'm going to be brazen here and say I can live with that. And if once we get the museum open, if the audience is as anticipated, I may have to come back to you in a year and say I need 4 more FTEs. As long as I can do that, I can live with this. This will get us through this transition period. I appreciate not cutting the budget, the governor's budget. So I don't know if that happens often, but I can live with that compromise.
Representative Amix.
Madam Chair, if that's the case, as long as, we don't see the service drop, and it sounds like to me that that's exactly what's happening, I can live with that.
Is there any other discussion? Representative Rajas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I'm trying to understand this. Budget doesn't change, but we're cutting FTEs. The budget is payroll, correct? So I get. So I'm trying to figure out is what are we gaining? Are we gaining when we take it to the full appropriations that we're cutting state employees, but the budget doesn't change the dollar amount being appropriated? I'm just trying to figure out what message are we sending?
As the maker of the motion, I will say the message I'm trying to send is that we want to be accurate. We want to fund 71 FTEs, and so that's what the budget will say, rather than a number that we're not funding. It's about, for me, it's about accuracy. And transparency.
Okay, so we're not, there's no flexibility if we're to add more employees, if they whatever get to their 71 instead of 83 or whatever it is.
So to reiterate, right now they have 56.
Right.
They are funded to 63 right now.
Right.
And then the governor added 8 more positions. So even going from 56 to 71 is 15 positions. And that, I mean, I'm speaking now as the person who made the motion, not necessarily as the chairman of the committee, but.
And that's
Yeah.
fine. I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, so we would fund 15 more positions than they have right now. And as we know, it's been hard to find people, and we can come back next year, is my feeling. And the director said she could live with that.
So instead of 50, so the governor, and I apologize. I apologize, President Scott, for taking in your time, but so the way the governor's recommendation would have been up to 81, correct? 71. So where am I getting the 81? I'm sorry if I'm all right, you're right. So 71. So if we back it off to whatever, but the budget doesn't change. I'm trying to see what are we getting savings, or what are we? I guess again I'm confused as far as if the budget number doesn't change, but the FTEs does. Are we having FTEs that don't get paid, or we're assuming they won't get filled? Is that the assumption?
Yes, because the actual last year was 58. The actual this year, from what I understand, is 56. But in FY 22 and 23 is 85.5.
If they're all filled.
So they have not, and they have not been budgeted. They have not been, there's not been a budget item for all 85 of those. Only 63 have been funded for this year. And now with the governor's
22.
Well, the governor added enough funding for 8 more. So that's where we get to the 71. I mean,
I don't want to take any more.
okay. Is there any other discussion? I'll close on my motion. Okay, all in favor of funding the State Historical Society at the governor's recommendation, but changing the number of the FTEs to 71. Did you need to say something? Okay, sorry. Please, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. And so we will fund the State Historical Society according to the governor's recommendation with a notation, or with the caveat that 71 FTEs are funded. Okay. Thank you, committee, for good discussion again. Okay, now we are so happy to welcome Pittsburgh State. First, we will begin with fiscal analysis, and then we will hear from Pittsburgh State. Thank you. Okay. We have handouts, committee. Dr. Scott. You go ahead. I said Shirley, but I didn't mean it. You go ahead. You go ahead, please.
I was not going to get in front of Shirley.
Yeah,
Right now.
we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you,
Go
Madam.
Gorillas.
I appreciate that very much. Appreciate Shirley dressing with Pitt State colors and representing Wynn. Appreciate you wearing red today. It is a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here, in fact. And I do want to thank Shirley. Shirley, appreciate your work over the years. You may or may not know this, but I'm retiring in June. And so this is my 13th year as president of Pittsburgh State University that I'm going to be wrapping up later this spring. And so I think Riley Scott called this my penultimate testimony. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be testifying at the Senate. So it is always an honor, and it's something exciting. Always look forward to being here. But certainly over the years, really appreciated Shirley's support and her guidance as we prepare for this. With me today, I mentioned Riley Scott is here. He's our advocate really on the ground here on a daily basis. And Dr. Sean Nacarado, he's our Chief Strategy Officer, and he is here as well. The microphone working? It seems to be cutting out. So Sean leads our economic development activity as well as our government relations activity. So they're here today with me. And if I can't answer a question, I bet they can. So we did submit some material to you ahead of time. In this document right here, we had a number of questions submitted by the committee, so we thought we would answer those in writing and submit those for the record. And so that is there for you. In addition to that, the Senate had asked us for information on HERF funding and GEAR funding, and so we put that together into a one-page document. Thought you ought to have that as well. So that's another piece of information that I'm sharing with you today. And then finally, the material I'll be sharing with you, and it really the last discussion kind of points to the need for this, is this document. So I'll use this as the guide for our conversation. And what we do is just like what you just experienced, dealing with the budget for the Historical Society, the State Library. By the way, my mother was on the local library board, so that kind of triggered a nice thought. But you deal with a lot of different complexities of state government and various agencies with all kinds of different responsibilities. So when you get to hear from a university the complexity of what we offer and do, I thought it'd be helpful to really clarify in a pretty simplistic way the kind of tasks we're involved in and provide you a pretty good update of what's going on at Pittsburgh State University. And then, of course, be ready to respond to questions. And Madam Chair, I do appreciate your commitment to provide greater time this year. I really do. I've been here a number of times where we might have 7 or 8 minutes. And in our case, we have a $110 million budget and over 800 employees and so on. It's hard to capture all that and really communicate with you in that kind of time frame. So with that, in terms of this handout, I'd like to look across the top of that handout, those images, and those images really define who we are. And the word transformation is the word that we adopted a number of years ago, excuse me, when we developed, when we developed a new strategic plan. And that plan, and a new mission statement. And that mission statement is very simple. You know, we used to have a mission statement that went a half a page, and it touched every base and talked about every group and every possible avenue of modeling or whatever you want to talk about in terms of what the university ought to be about. But we changed that mission statement to be this, that we are to provide transformational experiences for our students and our community. And that's it. That is our mission. If it doesn't fit into that, we don't do it. So you look across the top from left to right, you see a student at work or a graduate at work. Could be a student in an internship program. We have a very, very successful construction program at Pittsburgh State University. So we want to highlight the fact that we can change lives by the credential, the degrees that students earn, and then the work they go on to perform for Kansas businesses. I keep going, even though it doesn't sound like the mic is always on. At the far right, Regent Rogers, you're going to like this. We are also about changes and transformation for our community. You see it in downtown, and this last summer you saw it on campus. We had the farm show, the 4-state farm show there. It's been in the community or in the county for 30-some years, if not 40 years, and they were going to leave. Now, do you know how many ag programs Pitt State has? You probably know. None. But what we thought was, that's something we need to keep in this community. We don't have an ag program, but we host the 4-state farm show on our campus. And I think that shows the kind of commitment we have to the community, to help the community grow and prosper. And we'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. Then the middle, of course, in the middle of the pandemic, and it really in normal times, whatever those look like or whatever those will look like, we have to keep reinventing and transforming ourselves. And so you'll hear some information from me today that really points to that, how we continue to evolve as an institution, continue to serve the citizens of Kansas, and particularly the citizens of Southeast Kansas. So you look across the next line, Pitt State in 2022, kind of a brief summary, kind of a snapshot of some various things that I think are important to you, some facts that I think are important. We're about 6,000 students. We decreased in our enrollment since 2008. We hit a high point following the recession of 2008, 2009, where every single year for about 4 or 5 years we set record enrollments, and then that all is backed off. Our education is known for being countercyclical. When the jobs are plentiful, higher education typically pulls back a little bit, And when jobs are not very plentiful and there's high unemployment, people return to college to get a teaching degree or a nursing degree. So, and this enrollment trend is nationwide, and some of the questions within the other document speak to that. Good news within our enrollment is that we had a larger freshman class than we've had in some time. That was good news. I'll talk a little bit later about retention. Our retention rates are better. We have reduced the number of employees at Pittsburgh State University. I know you just talked about the number of positions at the State Historical Society. It's really higher education. We are so involved in the human capital and the costs of human capital. So when we have less enrollment, we have less revenue, and the state's not increasing the state allocation to Pittsburgh State, we had no choice but to reduce the number of employees. That's what a business would do. And that's exactly what we've done. So we've taken over 140 positions out of Pittsburgh State University. And think about that in Crawford County. That's a lot, but we have done that over time. A number of years ago, we did a layoff of about 18, and these other positions we've reduced. We've done it through attrition. As people have left, we've adjusted. So an office of 5 becomes an office of 4, an office of 8 becomes an office of 6. And we've done that. We've been very, very successful with that. And because of that, our financial situation actually is stronger now than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And we know that by the measure of what's called the Composite Financial Index, the CFI. And that number has gotten better and better over the last number of years. And that's something our creditors watch. That's something the Kansas Board of Regents are very aware of. And that's something we're proud of, that we've moved that number in the right direction, even in the midst of some pretty serious chaos. We raise about $9 to $11 million a year in private giving. We have a very successful development staff and just amazing following of guerrillas out there that want to help us improve the campus, improve our programs. And then also we've been very active in the grant funding space. And you can see that number right there. One of the questions I believe in the other document was about the majors that are most important, I shouldn't have said that are most prominent at Pittsburgh State University. Nursing is one of those. We have more nursing majors than just about any other major. Construction is not far behind. We'll have 400 or 500 construction majors at any one time. We really pride ourselves in dealing with pre-med, pre-physical therapy, pre-occupational therapy. Those pre-professional programs are very, very successful with a very high placement rate. So if you've got a son or daughter or grandchild or neighbor's kid is thinking about going to med school, we just don't think there's a better choice than to go to Pittsburgh State University with that first degree. And of course, teacher education is an important set of programs for us. All the regionals, in fact, the state of Kansas, the regionals as well as K-State and KU, Wichita State, we all have teacher preparation programs. Those programs are also suffering, though, just like you see people exiting the classroom. The number of students studying to be teachers is down significantly. I read recently across the nation that they're down about 17%. So I know we're worried about staffing nursing. We're also got to be worried about staffing our K-12 systems. And then, of course, we have a very robust business program and set of offerings. So on the next page, really, I wanted to focus on the Regents' strategic plan, which I think is really important to again, kind of simplify the mission and the purpose of our higher education system. And it does it with citing 3 pillars. A pillar that's all about families, a pillar that's about Kansas businesses, and a pillar that's about economic prosperity. And I really think the Regents nailed it when they developed this strategic plan, and they organized it into these 3 pillars. And it really helps us think about what we do and how we do it and who we're serving at any given time. And so if you think just down pillar 1, one of the ways we help with pillar 1 is we make higher education accessible. So state institutions, particularly regional institutions, have a good price point for most individuals. Now, over the last number of years, over the last 4 or 5 years, you see there, we've had minimal tuition increases, and within the governor's budget, she's proposing a 0% increase, and we are all in on that. In exchange, she's added about $45.7 million to the base for the system. That would be a very, very good move forward, which really in some ways is more of a catch-up than it's added on to where we are. It's catching up from past cuts, and really that state allocation not staying up with inflation. Even though inflation's been very modest, there's no way the state allocations have kept pace with that. We offer about $7 million in financial support to our students. So any way we can mitigate the cost of tuition by raising more private money, we do. And we turn those dollars right back to our students to reduce their costs. In this last group that came in the fall, again, it was a larger group. We had one of the highest retention rates we've ever had as that group moved to the spring enrollment. I think that's a very, very good sign for the future. So we have a number of things underway to help our students be successful. We spoke to some of those in the document that you see, the additional document. In terms of businesses, about 56% of our graduates really are coming into those high-skilled areas, those high-need areas, like construction and nursing and teacher preparation, special education, and so on. We've also added back computer science. A number of years ago, we actually did away with computer science. Why did we do that? Well, we actually converted it to what was called an embedded systems program. Just think about the average automobile probably has 25, 30 chips in it. Those chips have to be programmed, and those chips have to be designed. And we really have made an all-out effort to see if we could build a program in embedded systems. But I'm telling you what, when kids come to college, or when we had international students looking at us, embedded systems didn't work. Just the title didn't work. They're all looking for computer science, coding programs. And so we are instituting that again. The Kansas Board of Regents will be looking at that here in the next month to hopefully get that approved. And then finally, it's so important that we stay connected to the business community. We can't just be preparing people in construction, in plastics, in automotive, and do it from the ivory tower. By the way, we don't have any ivory towers on our campus. We have a Kansas Technology Center that, for example, has 14 different advisory councils. So our automotive curriculum is not only defined by, it's regularly modified by the input of our advisory councils. Same thing is true with our construction folks. And I've said before to this group, I believe, that a number of years ago, the Crosson Company came to us, their representatives who sit on that advisory council, and they said, our foremen, our superintendents, our project managers need to know how to speak some Spanish. So we need a workplace Spanish course. And that came through the advisory council, that went to the dean's office, that came to the faculty senate, and guess what? We developed a course on workplace Spanish for those students. That's the kind of responsiveness we've had, and that's why those students are so important to those businesses, because they're ready to go to work, they have the kind of skills they need, and they have the kind of background they need. So those councils are extremely important to us, and I think that really helps us meet that demand under Pillar 2 of being responsive to area, regional Kansas businesses. Pillar 3 is all about economic prosperity. Now, my predecessor, Dr. Tom Bryant, served for about 10 years, and I'm in my 13th year, as I said. And 23 years ago, Dr. Bryant and I would talk about this, economic prosperity, and we would say, what we need to do is grow the campus. Let's bring in more students, because if we bring in more students, we'll have more economic activity in the community. That was our view of economic development. It really was. And I'm not being critical of that time. It was just a different time. So over the last 10 years, 13 years, we've really redirected that to be very purposeful about our economic development activities. So if you think about a university, it's all about students crossing the stage and going to work. Well, that's incredibly important. But it's incredibly important that we're having an impact on our regional economy that's very, very positive, not just because we have more students and more faculty and staff. That's not the point. That we're supporting the growth of economic activity within that region. So we do that in a variety of ways. One of the ways we did is we went downtown and probably invested $20 million. Sean's overseen this project from the get-go to invest in 4 dilapidated buildings downtown that really need to be torn down. And somehow we salvaged them and turned them into what we call Block 22. And we put our small business development center right there in the midst of the business community. And you can see the kinds of numbers that we're serving out of those offices and that center. The biggest problem we've had with that group downtown is we've had such demand for that space that I think Sean's moved some of that staff around 3, 4, 5 times as he's trying to figure out where can he put them, because there's people that want to rent the space. And we're pretty entrepreneurial down there. We're capitalists. If we can rent space out to someone, we'll rent it out. We'll take our people and move them somewhere else. They're not quite in closets, but close. So very, very successful, really revitalized downtown, and our downtown looks very different from what it did 7, 8 years ago. Why? Because of Pittsburgh State University. I'd say the most nervous, other than testifying in front of you, the most nervous I have ever been in this job was to sign the documents for Block 22. Because I felt like it could define my time as president, or it could end it. It was that risky, and we made it work. And it's an incredible, incredible vision and an incredible opportunity for Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I could not be more proud of it. But you see the kind of numbers there, 32 new businesses. People have great business ideas, great passion, and no idea how to run a business. I've got vendors that have worked on a house I own. They don't even send me a bill. They can't figure out how to send a bill, for God's sakes. I had to call and say, send me a bill. And we have all kinds of support services for QuickBooks and all kinds of help to help them manage their cash flow, their capital investments. And we can do that, and we can help them be successful and turn those good ideas into good businesses that turn around and employ people. You know, we are I brought these, Sean, and these are pretty cool. That we've got a professor over in the economics department that every quarter he produces documents that show how the metropolitan, he calls it the micropolitan area, is doing. This data is used as we talk to businesses and industry. Today, I think the city of Pittsburgh announced a new FedEx distribution center will be located out by the casino. That's a great step forward for Pittsburgh. Number of jobs will be associated with that. There'll be good paying jobs. It'll be good for the region. I'll guarantee you the data that's in these documents was shared with those groups as they began to think about it. The other night, Sean texted me. He had left the city commission meeting, and the city commission voted 5-0 to renew our contract with the city to do economic development. Part of Sean's team's responsibility is to do economic development for the city of Pittsburgh. Now, I don't know about your city, but getting a 5-0 vote on the minutes is a big deal. Again, we're getting 5-0 vote to renew, and sometimes economic development projects and programs and contracts can be very controversial. They re-upped it. It's a really nice contract for us, and they're going to move forward to continue to work with them. You know, recently we broke ground on a $20 million project out by the high school for 55 and older individuals. It's not the university's project, but this is a good example of what happens. The developers for that project were in my office twice, 2 different times. They wanted to know, were we in? Could we support it? How did we think about it? What did we think of the price point for the apartments they were going to rent? Would we involve some programming? How does it fit with the arts offerings, the sports offerings? So we had great conversations. So they had the groundbreaking, and I told my assistant I probably ought to go out to that. So I went out to the groundbreaking, and lo and behold, the developers got up in front of folks, and they thanked the banks, and they thanked the city, and I swear they spent 10 minutes thanking me. Honestly, I was shocked, because I almost didn't even go. It was just another day as I represent Pitt State, represent the region. But they were so appreciative of the investment that the university would make in time, and energy, and commitment to making this project work. We are all in on economic prosperity, I'll guarantee you, and we're making a difference. So the last 2 things I'd mentioned, I know our time is getting short, but 2 things. Deferred maintenance. And I said earlier today, and got a chuckle out of Riley, we don't have any docking buildings on our campus. We don't have anything that looks anything like that. I don't mean the size, I mean the condition. We've taken good care of our buildings. We continue to take good care of our buildings. We have private individuals who are helping us update our buildings. But the backlog is so great, without some additional help, we're going to continue to run behind. Now, I've had a pretty good run of raising money. We've raised a lot of money over the years, but I cannot raise $1 million to replace a steam tunnel unless you want to talk later. We could put the radio show name on that or something. There's a way to make it. You just can't do it. We need the state's help on those kinds of infrastructure pieces that just are not attractive at all to private donors. It's just not going to happen. So the governor's recommendation of $25 million for that purpose is very attractive to us and very encouraging. Preferably, there would be something longer term. I understand there's some one-time money, but we've got to think longer term. And we're committed to taking good care of our facilities. Our donors are helping us take good care of our facilities and expand and renovate and update, but we can't do it by ourselves. That is the message. And then finally, and you're going to hear this from every single group that you hear from, and that is there is a chase for talent out there that is ridiculous right now. And we cannot have great institutions without great people. And so we have suffered through a number of years without salary increases. We've done some bonuses here and there, some one-time payments, some very modest increases of 1.5%. So I know everybody's reading about inflation right now, but salary pressures didn't start last month. It didn't start when the new administration took over. This has been going on. It's more acute right now. It's more apparent right now. But we really need your support. A great example was we had a student worker who worked for us in IT, and we paid him more than a regular student worker would make. He had darn good skills. We had him lined up for a $45,000 job when he exited. You know what he said? Thanks, but I'm going to take this $60,000 job, and I'm going to work from home. I'll never go to the office. That's what we're up against. And in Pittsburgh, Kansas, we used to have our pick of accountants and IT people and on and on and on. That is not the case now. So I would hope you would view that recommendation favorably, recognizing that a 5% increase probably isn't going to do it. I know that, but it's incredibly warranted and incredibly needed. And also, I might remind you that half of our salaries will be out of the tuition. So we'll have to find half of the raise. And then if you work for housing, housing is a standalone auxiliary. The governor's not going to send money for a 5% raise for somebody in housing or some other position. So it's not like we get all those dollars. We'll still have to make some magic happen to make that work. With that, that's a lot, but I hope you can see, hear, feel the passion I have for Pittsburgh State University and for the region and the kind of successes we're having despite the headwinds that we faced. I didn't even mention COVID hardly. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Committee, what questions do you have? Representative Mix.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's always great to see you, sir. On the front page, it talks about Pitt State is good for Kansas, and I honestly got to believe that. Being from Lawrence, Kansas, and the number of kids that we send your way, we appreciate the work that.
And you've got a university in your town, it seems.
Small one.
Yeah, small one. Yeah. It's just up the street from your place, I think.
Yeah, it is. I noticed the first point talked about 51% of the graduates who stay in Kansas. What part of your enrollment comes from Kansas?
Probably about 70%.
70%.
You know, we're in a, I'd say, difficult spot because we're just 30 miles, 25 miles from the Oklahoma border, and gosh, about 5 or 7 miles from Missouri. So certainly presidents ahead of me, particularly Dr. Bryant, really expanded the footprint of the university by having in-state rates go a little further, and that's been very helpful to us. But within that trade area, Southwest Missouri is an important, very, very important recruiting area for us. We get a lot of those kids from Missouri now, and we're probably about maybe 60-some% would be Kansas kids.
Along those lines, what is the situation with in-state tuition with the kids right there from Missouri and Oklahoma?
We really, I would say we've been a leader in trying to figure out how to expand that in-state footprint. We really have. So years ago, we went one county deep into Oklahoma and one county deep into Missouri. And we had 11 counties. And then we went to 2 counties deep, and we called it the contiguous. First it was contiguous counties, and then we added counties. We called it Grill Advantage. The Board of Regents have been very supportive. That's who provides the authority for us to make these kinds of decisions. They've been very supportive of us as we've faced enrollment challenges to really expand that. So this last year we added, I think we're up to 31 states altogether of in-state rates. Now our view is the more we can do that, the better off we are for our Kansas kids in terms of keeping their tuition low. And I think it's also a sign of a lot of institutions thinking that we're going to more and more be state located. You know, we get an allocation from the states, an essential allocation from the state, but we can serve a broader clientele. Now, what we've tried to do is focus on those programs where it makes sense. So we have students that come from Arizona to study wood technology. We're probably not going to have students from Arizona come and study teacher ed. We have an area in Illinois where John Deere is, and so we have graduates there. We think those individuals will come into our diesel heavy equipment program. So there's some strategic areas we think make sense. And as we can build the number of students at Pittsburgh State University and build our tuition base, it's just good for all of our students. That would be our argument. And then some of those students would stay.
And to clarify, you said 31 states?
Mm-hmm.
So you have students from 31 states? Or that those are, they are getting in-state tuition?
Getting in-state tuition.
Okay. And Representative Riley?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I don't know whether it got back to you or not, but of the information that you sent to us last week, one of my questions back was, I don't want to impromptu you, but what were those 31 states that you are reaching out to that you're giving them in-state tuition kind of thing, which leveraging that would make me think, why should you have out-of-state tuition if you're giving most everybody in-state tuition? So
that's kind of where I was headed with my comment, and I did see your question about that. And part of your question too is about why other institutions not doing it, but every institution is doing something like this. You know, Wichita State has the I-35 corridor that they've dealt with. KU's done some things like this. Emporia, Hayes has been pretty active west. There's all kinds of different permutations of this. But I think long term, it's probably going to be one tuition price. That's my guess. Long term won't be when you know, while I'm doing this job. But at some point, there probably will just be one figure. We didn't capture the Northeast. We didn't capture the Northwest because we're not going to spend any money there. We don't think there's any particular pockets of alums or graduates that would work for us. So we picked up everything but those two corners, Hawaii, Alaska.
Any other questions? Representative Rajas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. President Scott, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. You know, they spent 20 minutes talking about everything that you've done and your predecessors. I mean, I think that's well worth it, even though I'm on the other side of the state. We're still very much aware of the leadership that you brought and some of those things, the team that you have surrounded yourself with to make it one of the gems of the state of Kansas. So thank you for that. Couple of things. One, let's talk just a little bit about this ancillary enterprises. Could you explain a little more what that is when it comes to, is that the project and some of the other things?
Well, the term we would use would be auxiliary.
Or, I'm sorry.
Auxiliary enterprises. That's okay. But so just to clarify for everyone else, so auxiliary enterprises, there'd be several of them. Probably the most prominent one would be housing. So housing it's a part of the university, but it runs as a business. So it's about an $8 million operation overall. It's got its own employees. It's got its own maintenance people, people who pay the bills, accountants, and all those folks. That's an entity in and of itself. So as their occupancy rates ebb and flow, their number of employees do, because they've got to pay the bills. They're also connected then to food service. That's all captured within in that particular area. Another area would be the student center. It actually kind of operates on its own because, you know, it's got retail space in it that it rents out. It gets commission off of that. It's got a bookstore it gets commission off of. So those are really, we're a state operation, obviously a state entity, but within it we have some very entrepreneurial groups that would operate as well. Another one would be the Student Rec Center. To some extent is that way. It would have its own revenue stream from fees, and it would pay the bills and make things work on its own. And it gets complicated where the governor says we're going to do 5% pay raises, and these folks are sitting out there saying, but what about us? And then we have to figure out how to make that happen. So the neat thing about it, and do you have any areas that would be your Tyler Research Center? You can see a heavy dose of capitalism in what we do in entrepreneurism, actually. Yeah.
Yes, but if you answer, if you don't mind coming up, so everyone can hear that's online. Yes, Representative Rajas.
Thank you. One more, and you brought up the challenge of finding new educators. That's maybe the exit interview question. What's your idea? How can we encourage young folks or even second career folks to come back and be a part of education, be teachers?
This is a huge issue, and COVID has made it worse. The classroom is a difficult place to be. And I think we've really, as a society, we've been very, very critical of teachers. And, my grandmother taught in a one-room school. My mother was a teacher for, 30 years. She taught music. My daughter's a teacher. My wife's a teacher. To me, it's a very, very honorable profession. It's not been well compensated over time. Now, you've seen what's happened with nursing. Are we compensating nurses? We are. In some ways to the extreme now. I don't begrudge them the dollars because they're on the front lines of a very difficult situation. But people have a lot of choices when they go to college. You can be a teacher, you can be a nurse, you can be in construction, you're going to do this or that. And teaching's looking pretty difficult right now. So somehow we've got to bring respect back to the profession, that we respect the people who are there. Really, every school district I've ever been involved with my kids and my grandkids, my granddaughter's at the Kansas School for the Deaf. I don't know that I've seen any more compassionate, committed professionals than there. My grandkids are in Blue Valley School District. I've never seen more passionate, committed, capable professionals. They don't get treated like that. They don't, and they don't get compensated at the level they should be. So I think there's a whole range of issues. I know school finance is not one of your favorite topics. I get that. But somehow we've got to attract people to the profession who are high quality folks. I was trained to be a math teacher. I did it for 5 years. And then I moved to other roles, primarily financial. There were financial situations for me, and I had some leadership skills, but I love being in the classroom. But we don't give it the respect or the compensation it deserves.
Any other questions? Representative Bussinger.
And I hate to ask this when we're getting short on time, but I'm concerned about COVID and mental health. Whether they're coming into college, system, what kind of mental health services have you seen? And the other aspect of this, and I don't expect you to answer all of this, but there's such a large drug problem throughout our state, but in particular what I've heard is in Southeast Kansas. And that really segues right into mental health. Just give us I know that's an enormous question, but if you can put that into a nutshell.
Well, you're right. This is a huge issue and a growing issue and made worse by the pandemic. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Our own students have come to us on several years in a row now and ask us to expand mental health capacity and services. We took that to the board this last year. We were not successful with that. We were going to add some fees to make that happen. That was not approved. But we think that's one of the most critical things that we can do right now. If you ask me what positions should you add on the campus right now, you just had quite a discussion about FTE. It would be in mental health. There's just no doubt. That's what the need is. And I know what you're saying about the drug issue. Southwest Missouri has that as well, meth and other kinds of things. I mean, it's not something that we see so much of with our students necessarily, but the mental health side of things and the stress that students are putting on themselves and what COVID has done to them and their families is very, very real. And I think we got to get past saying we just need to suck it up and move on. We're all facing a lot of stress. We can't do that. We've got to give them more help. So it's a huge issue. It's probably the single biggest issue we face in student life.
Okay, committee, other questions? I have three.
Okay.
Specific and general. As far as the specific question, on this sheet with, the questions on the second page, number 4, your programs with the lowest enrollment, do you know the numbers, like how many graduates you had in the Bachelor of Integrative Studies or Physics?
Sure, we can get that for you. We can get that for you.
Okay, that would be great. And then, I've got a chart that I'm looking at that is from the Department of Education. And I know I'm just throwing this at you, so certainly you later can respond or whatever. But the title is Student Completions of Programs Which Lead to Teacher Certification. And I'm looking at Pittsburgh State, and you've gone up from 19 to 20 to 21 in the number of teacher certification programs. So I'm a little bit, trying to understand you talking about how that you have less students in your education program.
The programs line up with the certification standards, or now called licensing standards. So if those standards change, then we would have to adapt. Like if they had a K-12 music and they went to a K-8 and an 8-12 music license, that one license turns into 2. So there's all kinds of different ways that can change. So the number of programs wouldn't really reflect necessarily the number of individuals within those.
Yeah, these are student completions. So in
what program area then?
Programs which lead to teacher certification.
Gosh, we would have 80.
Well, okay, I'm looking
20.
at this. In 2019, you had 175. In 2020, 187. And in 2021, 200. So it's gone up.
Yeah, so
This is I don't mean to just throw this at you, but I would be interested to kind of understand.
I'll have to look at that and get back to you on that, because I don't know.
Okay, it's from the Department of Education.
So I do know overall our number of education graduates has declined, and the number of people we have student teaching is down. I know that.
Okay, so somehow we'll try to put those two things together.
Glad to.
Okay, then my last question, and then I'll call on you, Representative Riley. So that number, the question at the very end, number 19, what's the appropriate role for Kansas taxpayers to gain involvement in the ideological direction? And, you said we don't have an ideological direction. I just would say any organization has a culture, you want transformation into something.
Right.
So not saying that you have some deep, dark ideological direction. I think the question was, what's the appropriate role for taxpayers if they want to speak into your culture or your, program development, or even, just what's going on in the university?
So a couple of things. I wrote that answer, and I probably wrote it from a political perspective, right? Thinking, you think we're producing Democrats.
We're politicians.
We're producing,
so, yeah.
or we're producing Republicans. Well, we don't even think that way.
No.
We don't think that way. So that's probably my fault. That was because I actually pinned that. I wrote that. So how do taxpayers weigh in? Well, there's several ways. One is we don't have compulsory higher education. Students come or they don't come. So that does impact how you operate, because you've got to be responsive to the market, to business needs. You've got to be responsive to students, to families. So that is part of, I guess, the feedback loop that we would have. We have people regularly call my office or other offices to offer advice for what we're doing or not doing. Whether it's in our athletics program or our curriculum, we certainly have that. I mentioned the business or the technology advisory groups. We have those in business as well, in our business programs. So they really are talking to us about what we need to cover, not just within the curriculum, but what are the soft skills those students are needing. So there's a lot of opportunities for them to help us craft that. And I would say if we don't have the right culture, we're just not going to exist over time. And we're not going to draw the donors, because the donors, they're local. Almost all of our donors are very local. They see what we're doing on a regular basis. They're around us. They eat with us. I see them on a regular basis. I go out to dinner with them or lunch or whatever. They're providing plenty of advice as well. So we're very accessible. We're listening and adjusting and navigating.
Thank you. Representative Riley?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And this was another one of my questions that I sent back to you, so maybe you already know this, but so can you explain to me the lost revenues, $7,920,000?
And first of all, I wouldn't say nightmare, because we are allocated all this money from the feds, right? So it's good to have dollars, but it comes with a lot of direction and strings and constraints and so on. So I would say, and we all, as we've spent the dollars, we were very aware of the fact that we have to be spending the dollars exactly as they're supposed to be spent, right? So we could justify everything, because there's going to be auditing that will occur in the years ahead. So I feel really good about that. In terms of lost revenue, so what you do is you look across the campus and you say, where did you lose revenue? Was your enrollment down because of COVID as you went to this last fall or the fall before? And there's calculations you could make for what you thought enrollment was going to be, what enrollment turned out to be. So there's tuition loss. We had athletic events with nobody there, or no athletic events. We should have had 6 home football games. We had 1. All those gates were wiped out as lost revenue. Probably one of the biggest one would be in housing. So when we closed housing, we sent people home, we refunded their money. Remember I mentioned that we operate like a business. They didn't use those rooms, we sent the money back. That was lost revenue. That was revenue we expected to have during that year, but we didn't end up having. So you add all that up, gets to $7 million. You're going to hear some much bigger numbers from that, from the other institutions, the larger institutions, because they would have had significantly greater revenue losses. Our athletics program is not an athletics corporation. It's part of the university. Some places that, you might hear at the University of Kansas, they handle that differently. But for us, it's a part of the university, so they got to play in that as well.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being really detailed with your, the relief funds and giving us that. I am curious, the vaccine incentives, so were students paid for getting vaccines?
I know it's controversy about mandates, about vaccines. I don't know if you've read that or not. But,
somewhere, yeah.
So we're, I use the word navigate a lot. We have navigated some really complex situations. The governor might have come out and said this, and, the local political leaders say that, and you got the local county health folks. We had a lot of great help as we've navigated our way through this, and I think we've made good decisions. In fact, today I think we're going to back off of our mask mandate in the classroom. We're going to announce that either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So we've tried to dial in the right approach and back off. So we did come to believe very early on that vaccines were effective and they were safe. We believed that. And so we never toyed with the idea of requiring it, but we said, what kind of incentive can we create for students and faculty and staff to get vaccinated? The old-fashioned way, pay them. So what we said was, because we've had limited salary increases and opportunities to increase people's compensation, we said, why don't we just put a dollar figure out there and say, if you'll go get vaccinated, we'll add $1,000 to your check next month. Oh, I got people's attention. We got over 80% of our faculty and staff vaccinated. We've not had a lot of transmission on campus. For the students, we said, if you'll go get vaccinated, we'll give you a $500 scholarship in the spring. And for those students exiting in December, we wrote them a check. So it's all kosher, it's all allowed. Taxes were paid on it, and all those kinds of things had to take place. But it was very popular. And while it was controversial to think about a mandate, it was not controversial to think about get a shot, get a check. America.
And just out of curiosity, was that if they got the first shot or the second shot, or how did you determine?
I think on that one, at the time, it was the 2 shots. And the Pfizer, or the J&J, you did one.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, committee, any other questions for Dr. Scott? Anybody? Okay.
Can I make one?
Yes, of course you may.
Last time for the group, I just want to ask you to think about a couple things. And that is, we kind of hit it with Representative Rogers' comment about K-12. You know, Rodney Dangerfield never felt like he got any respect. I think that's how people feel on our campuses. I think they don't feel valued. And I think we need to do something about that. So now they read in the paper, there's historic surpluses. The governor's made recommendations for increased funding. We're going to have a real morale problem if there isn't some increased funding. We need your support. And I would say we deserve your support. And I'm in front of you, but there's 800 people on our campus that work really hard every day. And you don't see them. You're not around them. You don't feel that. But they do an amazing job in a very difficult time. And I couldn't be more proud of them. And one thing I would encourage you to think about in the future is a bus tour. Be on our campuses. You need to be on our campus. You need to see what we're doing. And those decisions you make here, I think, will be well served by that. So I would invite you to come spur of the moment, driving through town. You think, I'll just go see the president. If it's before June 30, I'll be there. And I would love to see you. Our folks deserve your support. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you for coming. It's great to see you in person. We're so glad we can do that this year instead of what we did last year. And a bus tour is a wonderful idea. I love that. So, okay, committee, I think Shirley would like to say something.
Since he brought up the bus tour, which he will remember back in 2013, we did a bus tour to all the universities, and I would love to do another one.
Wow, how many days was that? I mean, Okay, sounds fun. Party on the college campus is what. Okay, all right, committee, is there anything else for the good of the committee? Okay, we will see you here tomorrow, same time. We are adjourned. Thank you.